أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
The land of Egypt, ancient and timeless, the gift of the river Nile, and for 5,000 years of human history, a cradle of civilization. For 3 centuries of Egypt's antiquity, the thriving Greek port of Alexandria served as its capital city.
The many contributions of Alexandria to civilization should not be forgotten with the passage of time. Rather, we should acknowledge not only their potency, their impact, but also the continuing relevance that they possess to our own lives today.
Throughout this bustling metropolis that is modern Alexandria, one can hear the echoes of a remarkable past, for the history of Western civilization is anchored here. This great harbor was once the haven for extraordinary ideas, events, and individuals. Here are the ancient moorings of our modern world. On that shore, our destiny was shaped by the city's founder, the greatest conqueror the world has ever known. His name was Alexander the Great. And when he died, after his many conquests, his mummified body, kept in a gold coffin, returned here to spend eternity in Alexandria. This was the city, too, of the Ptolemies, a brilliant Greek dynasty that ended in love and war with Caesar, Cleopatra, Antony, and Augustus. Alexandria, Monument to Civilization, is the first program that will fully explore our Alexandrian roots. Documenting the history of Alexandria on film represents some unique challenges and opportunities. Ancient Alexandria was a city of the monumental, a mass of buildings, colonnades, groves, and parks. All around there were palaces, theaters, great temples to gods for every land, too much in fact to see. Sight, sound, smell, and taste, the exotic was everywhere. This was a city of the world, cosmopolitan in Greek, a hodgepodge of humanity.
This has always been the thing about Alexandria which makes it different from any other city in Egypt. It has always been cosmopolitan. It has, had all kinds of nationalities, and everybody has his share in what we call Alexandrian civilization.
Alexandria, Monument to Civilization, takes us back then to a time when Alexandria was at the height of its power and influence, when it was at the center of the known world.
This extraordinarily didactic and highly enjoyable film, Alexandria, Monument to Civilization, is a very, very important work because it tries in part to recreate the appearance of the ancient city of Alexandria and give us an insight into its genius or its spirit. The city of Alexandria in antiquity has vanished because it's been continually overbuilt by subsequent generations of inhabitants. And yet excavations in the city, such as at Kom el Dika, which is smack dab in the middle in the downtown area, reveals a fleeting but very, very tangible glimpse of ancient Alexandria proper. There, excavators have brought to light a theater, some people call it an Odeon, where performances were held. In front of that theater or Odeon is a street, and we can imagine the crowds of Roman Alexandrians going to and fro on that street as they went to the Roman baths, which have been excavated, or perhaps even to their homes, some of which are there on the site for us to see. All of this commercial activity in Alexandria was predicated on the produce of the land of Egypt proper, which was brought in for transport elsewhere. And of all of those agricultural regions, none is more productive than the Fayum, about a several hours drive southwest of modern Cairo today. In a good year today, with conditions being ideal, the Fayum can still produce in certain crops 2 crops a year. When the Alexandrians themselves were not involved in such civil or commercial activities, they might frequent one of their religious sanctuaries, the so-called Serapeum being an example. The Serapeum today is located in the midst of a large archaeological park bounded by a hillock. There, many statues from the area have been deposited to give some idea of the ambiance of what the ancient city might have been like. One such statue is the colossal image of Isis Faria, the patron deity of the harbor. Today, she still lies on her back, and we're awaiting the opportunity to re-erect her so you can see her in all her splendor and glory. On top of the hillock of the Serapeum, it's dominated by a large monolithic granite column, incorrectly in the guidebooks called Pompey's Pillar, more accurately a monument of Diocletian, and it is surrounded by several sphinxes representing the Ptolemaic rulers. In the very area of the Serapeum has been found the remains of a Ptolemaic temple, and the foundation deposits of this temple have been excavated within the last 50 years. Of all of the monuments in Alexandria still to be seen, none is more spectacular than the Greco-Roman Museum. In recent years, the Egyptian Antiquities Organization has completely renovated the museum, so now it is very beautifully installed, well illuminated, and the objects can be contemplated in an atmosphere of unhurried relaxation. Among the masterpieces there are perhaps a mosaic representing a personification of the city of Alexandria herself, a female figure wearing as a headdress a ship, perhaps symbolizing the commercial activities of the land. In addition, there's a lovely wall painting from Wardian, a vicinity of Alexandria, which shows a water wheel and how the agricultural technologies of the land have really not changed since the Ptolemaic Roman period. The museum is a showcase for Alexandrian Greek marbles as well as no other museum in the world. Nevertheless, these masterpieces don't really give us by themselves an idea of the magnificence that once was Alexandria. Why was Alexandria such a beacon that shone to illuminate the annals of Western history and make us understand that Alexandria was the center of learning, science, and engineering, which she was? And we need to ask ourselves, what kind of engineers were the Alexandrians? The answer to that question, both physical and metaphorical, can perhaps be gleaned a little bit by going to Tapouziris or Abu Sir, a little ride along the coast westward of Alexandria. There, in a pre-dawn trip, one might come upon the remains of the Pharos, which has been tastefully and accurately restored in this century.
We are standing now in front of the tower of Tapouziris, or modern Abu Sir. It's quite an interesting monument because we believe it was modeled on the famous Pharos of Alexandria, and it should be slightly later in date. Of course, this is much smaller than the ancient Pharos. Perhaps it's 1/10 of the size of the original one, and probably there were more of this shape all along the coast from Alexandria westward. This one was restored in the 30s, and it served a very important purpose. It directed ships both in the harbor on the sea and on Lake Mariut. And the situation was very carefully chosen.
Yeah.
You can see it from quite a distance.
Yeah, you saw them about 10 kilometers away. You can see it.
About 10 kilometers. If you come from Burj Al Arab, you can see it from about 10 kilometers.
I thought it was interesting, too, that we came here kind of like in the early morning, and it was radiant with the light behind it, and it became, for us in the film, a symbol of the intellectual activity.
Well, it certainly reminds us of the intellectual life in ancient Alexandria. And the city itself has great similarity with Alexandria, lying on a hill between the sea and the lake.
Yes, yeah.
And judging by the size of the temple and even the cemeteries that still exist, it must have had a very big population.
The city became the meeting place for wealthy Egypt and the outside world. Crowding into its harbors were the colorful, polyglot, weather-beaten sailors of the ancient Mediterranean Sea.
The influence of Alexandria on our world is everywhere around us, whether it be the architectural legacy of the great Pharos lighthouse, one of the seven wonders of the ancient world, or the modern research institute, which is in part the product of developments in scholarship and science that took place in Alexandria nearly 23 centuries ago.
We are the products of this brilliant past. We are sailors from this shore.
you.